Hi, welcome to Prompt 3. We're going to focus on an educational challenge. So, for my challenge, I chose classroom management. I feel like classroom management can be a huge problem in a classroom. It can make or break a classroom, it can make or break a teacher. Classroom management is a challenge because it is a blanket term for so many things going on in a classroom. The biggest challenge is, of course, behavior management and running a classroom smoothly. Classroom management doesn't just mean how you manage behavior, but if you do not run your classroom effectively, if your lessons are not planned, to a way that's going to meet your students' needs, you are going to have a problem with behavior and attention and getting through the day with what time you have. So even though behavior is not the only aspect of classroom management, it's kind of the focus because behavior kind of encompasses everything that classroom management is, because if your classroom is not ran properly, then behaviors are going to occur. So even the smallest interruptions can throw a lesson off, cause chaos, and you're basically done for the day. Once it gets bad, it's bad. Effective teaching and learning cannot take place in a poorly managed classroom. Many teachers contribute their burnout and dissatisfaction in their work to behavior problems. So classrooms, we know, are overcrowded. They're full of so many different students with different backgrounds, different cultures, different needs. And we as teachers have to create a classroom where every student feels supported, lessons are engaging, and students want to stay on task. They don't want to act out, they don't want to get distracted. And that can be difficult to do when you have students who are easily distracted and can get frustrated and lash out because of that. One issue is that teachers are not being trained properly. They are not getting the tools that they need to effectively run a classroom in a way that keeps behavioral issues low and learning high. In one article that I read, it found that few teacher training programs focus on classroom management, which leaves novice teachers unprepared to manage student behavior or to take on a leadership role in the classroom. So teachers need to know how to run a classroom and teach their students to respect the space. That's another big thing. Your students are going to want to respect that area and want to be on their best behavior so they can learn. So, the history of classroom management. In the early 20th century, classroom management was centered on teachers having authority and student compliance. This is basically the teacher tells you what to do, you do it. The teacher stands there and teaches, you listen. If you act out, it's going to be a problem. There were, harsh punishments back then, corporal punishment, public shaming and embarrassment, the dunce hat that people used to put on the kids. There's a good bit of debate right now on whether corporal punishment is effective or harmful. Many researchers have found that corporal punishment is ineffective and harmful. They also suggest it encourages students to solve their problems with violence. So if a student gets in trouble for something at school, they get a paddling. They're going to think that a good way to handle problems is with their hands or some other term of violence. So in the 1970s, researchers suggested that a more preventative approach would be the best way to go. So instead of a student does something, then they get in trouble, it's I'm going to teach my student strategies so they do not get in trouble. So Jacob Koonin was a key player in this kind of new philosophy that was going on. He believed that classroom management wasn't just about discipline, but about how a teacher presents lessons, monitors students, and engages with the classroom. He helped show that teachers can prevent the problems in the classroom. That's the key word there. Prevent them from happening, not address them or handle them when they've happened, but to prevent it before they occur, rather than waiting for them to happen to address an issue. So as the years are going on, classroom management theory began to include more student-centered approaches and social learning. As classroom changes with time, the issues we face change as well. COVID took a big hit on classroom management because kids weren't getting the social exposure that they needed. So when they came to a classroom, they didn't know how to sit and learn because they hadn't been anywhere but home. Okay, so for students, the way a classroom is managed sets the tone for everything that happens in that classroom. Students cannot learn in chaos. They can't. Even if it's the students that is creating the chaos, they cannot learn in that chaos. When a classroom isn't managed properly, disruptive behaviors are bound to escalate. When you have these classrooms with these frequent outbursts and disruptive behaviors, they're going to have less academic time. They're losing learning time. Test scores are going to be lower. They're not going to be able to focus. Distractions are going to be everywhere. Once that distraction happens, it's really hard to get back on task, so your time is basically just out the window. All of our students learn differently, but pretty much all of our students learn in a well organized, well ran classroom. When those behavior problems become overwhelming, it is pretty much impossible for any learning to take place. And so you need to try to keep those problems at a minimum. I know we're never going to get rid of them all the way, but if you can learn how to run your classroom in a way that it's to a minimum, things are going to go much smoother. And not only that, like with me teaching kindergarten, I'm teaching students how to be a student. So you're setting the tone for that child's whole educational career. If their introduction to school is chaos, that will follow them throughout the years. For the teachers, teaching can be an overwhelming profession. It can be very stressful. As much as we try not to, we're going to take that stress home with us. We're going to take those kids home with us. We think about them all the time. Things we can do that are better for them. You're responsible for the education of someone else's child. You're responsible for around 20 or more students and how well they are prepared for the next grade level. And that in itself is completely overwhelming. And then when you add problems that come with managing a class, it can just be almost unbearable. Teachers are experiencing burnout at a concerning rate. Teachers who have significant problems with behavior management and classroom discipline often report high levels of stress and symptoms of burnout and are frequently ineffective. So if you are stressed out, you are not enjoying what you're doing, and you are overwhelmed, your teaching is not going to be as effective. I have talked to so many teachers that have left the profession just altogether because of stress and frustration. A lot of this comes with, the behavior and managing the classrooms. A lot of the time it's lack of preparedness or support from admin. If admin aren't supporting you, you're going to have a hard time with addressing the concerns that you have in your classroom. So, various viewpoints. Some people still believe that teachers should approach classroom management with complete control, authority. Teachers say something, the students do it without question just because that's what their teacher told them to do. Dunbar says that there are 4 different outlooks that a teacher has on classroom management. First off, you have the authoritarian. This is the strict teacher. This is the sit down and be quiet, do what I say because I said so. Then you have the authoritative, which places limits on the students but also encourages independence. They explain the reasoning behind the rules. They're open to discussions, polite but firm. I feel like this is, kind of where teachers need to be, that they want their students to have their independence, but at the same time, they're not going to, students aren't just jumping around the classroom and acting up. Then you have the indifferent teacher. These are teachers that are not very involved in the classroom at all. They don't put hardly any demands on the students. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. I'm just here for the paycheck. No initiative, no discipline, like that. Then you have the laissez-faire. That's very few demands on students, but it's because they don't want to hurt their students' feelings. They want to be their students' friends, do your own thing, have fun. When lessons are interrupted, they're very chill about it. So, I have worked with children since I was 17 years old. However, I wasn't prepared for what a classroom can be like. I wasn't prepared for that. I thought working with kindergarten, it was going to be all sweet, fun times, sunshine and rainbows. That is not always the case. We do have fun, but I am setting the bar for how these students will learn to behave in a classroom. I've seen a lot of behavior problems in my school, in my classroom. I've had students with behavior plans set in place, a BIP, behavior intervention plan that requires data to be kept, And that's on top of everything else you have to do, all the other data that you have to keep on your students. That's data for just this one student where you have to watch them, and keep up with that. I try to make sure to start each year with clear, consistent expectations. I also believe in making connections with my students, making the classroom feel like a family. I feel like that sets the school year for success. When they feel like they're a part of something, they don't want to ruin that, to mess that up. Lesson planning, super important. Keep your students engaged. Fun lessons where they're not going to want to act out. Keep the distractions low. Get to know your students, know what works for them, know, what strategies will work, how they like to learn, and the best way to redirect them. So our school, I feel like, does a really good job with involving families and communities in our drive for positive behavior. A couple of years ago, we completed the Capturing Kids Heart program. It's a program that works with educators to help create a classroom culture that's like positive, good student-teacher relationships, improve school culture, building self-managing classrooms. That means that, do your students run your classroom? No, but they are involved in how the classroom is ran. They help set, the standards. We make a classroom contract. The students tell me what they think should be on the contract. They have hand signals, if they're doing the right thing, if they're getting a little antsy and it's something that needs to be corrected, and they know the ways that they can correct that. Like if a student says something not nice to another student will look at them and give them a sign. That wasn't nice. You need to do something about that. And that student knows that, hey, I need to go apologize. I need to regulate that for myself. We also implement the positive behavior intervention support, so PBIS framework. It is a school-wide data-driven framework that attempts to prevent behaviors by positive reinforcement. So students earn Eagle Bucks for good behavior, for good choices. They can spend those at the Eagle Buck store. Every month we have a PBIS celebration where the students who don't have any write-ups or any behavioral issues for that month get to go celebrate. We have different organizations in our community that will, donate to this and sometimes even attend it to celebrate. So that kind of gives that community engagement. Here are my artifacts for classroom management and behavior. Right here is the website to Capturing Kids Heart. Here we have our poster for this month's PBIS celebration. It's going to have a Halloween theme. The students are going to be super excited about that. This is our classroom contract. We make these, I don't really like to call them rules, just guidelines. We make these together, and then at the end, all of my students sign it. Me and my parapro, Miss Anderson, have signed it, and then it is displayed in our classroom, and we review that every day. Here we have our hallway behavior sign. I feel like these are really good because it highlights self-control and making good choices. And then this is our Eagle Buck wallet in our classroom. This is where the students store their Eagle Bucks before they spend it at a store. This is actually right after they spend it. That's why it's looking a little empty. We had just went shopping the day before. And that is it for prompt 3. Thank you.